Representative Lucero, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to start with this. I'm a nonpartisan employee here, but I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. You look like $1 million.
Thank you.
You have to tell us what is the secret to the weight loss?
Well, earlier last year, in 2019, April, I decided I was just tired of being overweight. And so it was at that time I decided to go on to a keto and an Atkins diet, I guess is the best way I can describe it. And so over the course of the summer, I have lost 65 pounds, and it feels great. But there is one negative to that, is I had to completely buy a brand new wardrobe.
You do have one of the flashier wardrobes around here too, so I could see how that might be an issue. But you do look great. I had to get that out of the way.
Thank you.
So you represent House District 30B. Tell us about that area. It's an area that I have some family in. I've been there quite a bit, and it seems like over the past decade, it's kind of changed a lot. It's grown. It's gotten bigger.
Absolutely. So I have the privilege of representing 5 communities: Albertville, St. Michael, Otsego, Hanover, and then the Wright County portion of Dayton, which is where I live. And you are spot on. There are so many developments that have been being constructed over the last several years. There are thousands of new residents have moved into House District 30B. Why are they moving there? Because it is a fantastic community. Great schools, great parks, just great quality of life that people definitely are attracted to.
And it's very unique, actually, because you can't really say it's urban. You can't say it's rural. It's definitely a mix. That being said, what kinds of issues are important to your constituents?
Well, ex-urban is how we describe it, but there is a significant portion of rural because there's still a lot of farmland in the community, which I'm proud to definitely represent the farming interests as well. But I would say the top issues in the community, definitely pro-life. Very strong pro-life district, a very strong pro-Second Amendment. Roads and bridges transportation is something I've been fighting for. That's a high priority because 94 cut to the district, and we had a significant victory a couple legislative sessions ago in terms of the funding dollars to widen I-94 from St. Michael up to Albertville. So that is underway over the next couple years. Free market healthcare solutions is another one. Tax cuts, and I would say to round out the top 6 is definitely equity and education funding.
How about bonding? This is the second year of the legislative session, typically focuses on bonding. How important is that to your district this time around?
Not very. I don't see very many bonding requests coming from the community, nor am I necessarily interested in using state dollars to build projects that don't have a regional or statewide significance.
So how do you feel about that $2 billion number that Governor Tim Walz proposed as part of his bonding proposal?
Preposterous. It's using tax dollars to build local projects. Libraries, things that do not have a regional or statewide significance to them. So it's absolutely preposterous, something I absolutely oppose.
So what's a number that makes sense? Republicans have kind of said it would have to be half of that for them to be on board.
Well, one of the things that I heard a member of the Senate speak about was we have a significant projected budget surplus. And so I think that, what is it, 1.6 billion, if I recall, something in that neighborhood of a projected budget surplus. That is something, do we even need a bond? Right? A budget surplus, if there genuinely is a state interest or a regional interest, a benefit to spending on a particular project, why do we have to borrow? Why can't we use the surplus? If we're not going to use the surplus for tax cuts, we certainly shouldn't use additional dollars to go into further debt.
And you serve on the higher education, judiciary, and public safety divisions. What areas or what issues would you like to see the legislature make a priority this session?
This coming up session, well, when it comes to, we are fully financed as a state government, fully financed, so spending shouldn't necessarily be at the top of the priority. Well, where we need to see and address significant problem is Department of Human Services. We have seen headline after headline after headline come out starting, prior to last year, but all throughout the summer. There is a serious systemic problem within DHS that has not been addressed at this point. And I continue to see obfuscation and just beating around the bush to wanting to hold people accountable. In fact, to date, nobody's been held accountable. Nobody's been held accountable, and there's been clear admissions of breaking of the law. Where is this tens of millions of dollars going to come from? So that, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important topics that we need to address this session.
I wanted to ask you too, I'm kind of curious, your member page lists your occupation as a cybersecurity specialist. So I wanted to get your take on hacking. We heard a lot about election security this last session. Coming up in November, there's going to be another election. Are you confident in the states and I guess even the country's cybersecurity? Is it up to snuff, do you think?
In cybersecurity as a whole, or specific to elections?
I guess specific to election in this area.
Well, I'll just say this. Cybersecurity is a huge threat across the board. As we continue to see Internet of Things and more parts of our life become Internet capable, there is absolutely growing threats to being compromised. So when it comes to election security, definitely that is a concern. It is definitely a concern to ensure the integrity of our election system. But one of the things that I have been beating the drum on is having a technology system hardened against potential compromise by threat actors is definitely important. But what if we have a technology system that is completely secure? An unauthorized party cannot get into the system. But the data in the system, the information that's contained in this protected system in and of itself is flawed. That doesn't serve good for the people. And what I mean by that is, in my opinion, and there are many that agree with me, that we do not have sufficient controls in place that the data that we're entering into the system is indeed valid. And what I mean by that is people misrepresenting themselves, not being eligible to vote, voting more than one time. And so if you have people that are in the system that are not eligible to vote, that are not being purged or held accountable, then we have a hardened system that's secure against threat actors that contains false data. And that is something we need to address. So that is, in my opinion, certainly not being addressed.
You know, one of the bills that you have too, House File 1821, create the Student Data Privacy Act. 4 of the 6 co-sponsors are DFLers. What would that bill do, and do you think it'll get any traction?
Well, student data privacy is one of the things that I have been focused on since I became a legislator, so my entire time in office here. And I'm proud that it's a bipartisan bill. So in that bill particularly, as technology continues to increase, there is more and more hardware and software that's obviously in use in our classrooms, but the law is not keeping up with technology. And this hardware and software that's in use in our classrooms doesn't have sufficient controls in place for the data that's being harvested on our students by the tech companies and what they're using for that data for. So they're harvesting information, they're data mining the information, creating profiles, and sharing it with third parties without the express authorization or even knowledge of the parents. And so what this bill seeks to do is bring our statutes up to date to put parents back in control of their students' private data. And it's not just that. That's one bill you brought up, and it's a great bill, and it's one that we need to move forward. But there are many other areas of technology that continue to advance. We see facial recognition. We see many other areas when it comes to the healthcare. The healthcare space is grossly, in my opinion, doesn't have sufficient controls in place because, again, it's another, think of all the devices in the healthcare space that are now internet capable. Mm-hmm. And those devices, the programming, the firmware in this hardware that's being used is in and of itself, there's no standardized practice to ensure that the firmware or the software in use is going to be up to date, which leaves large gaps for compromise. And compromise in that space, as we've seen, I think there was I forget the name of the malware that infected, I think it was a UK hospital. Mm-hmm. It shut their systems down. And now those compromises become life-threatening. It's not just an inconvenience of identity theft, it's life-threatening.
How do we, do anything about that? What needs to happen to combat these type of issues?
Well, we need to get serious as a state government. We need to get serious. We don't have a committee that's focused on this. We have a Data Practices Commission, but this issue, unfortunately, when I have conversations with colleagues, they have great intentions, but this topic, the topic of IT, people's eyes glaze over really quick. And so we just need to have a serious committee, serious discussions that we can advance this topic. And I'll tell you, when we're out of session here, we've been out of session for approximately 7-8 months. Think of how much the technology has advanced in just those 7-8 months. And now we're going to come back and pick up where we left off. And unfortunately, there are more threats that have obviously come into the wild since that time.
And just finally, I have to ask before we let you go, there's got to be a top dressed list around here with Representative Lucero at the top, or at least in the top 5. Where did the suits come from? I mean, and where do you get your style?
So so to answer the second question first, the reason I enjoy these jackets that are a little bit more flashier, push the boundaries,
Sure.
put it that way, is because inside I have a boldness. In my heart, it's a boldness for the truth, just being bold. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, you can't see the heart, and so the best way I can demonstrate that is to manifest that on the outside with these jackets.
Sure.
Is I have a boldness, I'm pushing forward for the truth, and that's where the tongue-in-cheek in these jackets comes from. As to the first question, where do they come from? Yeah. All over the place. Any place I can find a nice jacket, I'll absolutely buy it. But I would say, generally speaking, it's when jackets themselves are on clearance, 50% off, and then those clearance items go onto the super clearance rack for another 40% off. That's where I find my best stuff.
Do you have an idea for opening day what you're gonna wear?
I have been mulling that over since I've lost the weight. I've had to go out, like I said, and replace my entire wardrobe. So I have many candidate jackets here for the first day, first week, and so on. So no, I haven't decided yet, but I'm looking forward to it.